Welcome to Bethany. Today we are celebrating the 25th Sunday of Ordinary Time, and we have three very interesting readings to look at. The first reading comes to us from lesser known prophet Amos. He is one of the minor prophets in the Old Testament. He lives approximately 800 years before Jesus. He is a shepherd and a sycamore fig farmer from Tekoa in Judah, which is at that time in the south kingdom of Israel. However, he preaches in the north kingdom, so he is above the line of Jerusalem, approximately 10 miles away from Jerusalem, in the place called Bethel, which means house of God. Unfortunately, that place gets a very bad nickname, house of wickedness, because of what happened there. So the background of the story, of today's story, is this. As I just mentioned, Israel is divided onto North Kingdom and South Kingdoms. North Kingdom, it is approximately Samaria where Bethel is. And because of that division, King Jeroboam established two shrines in the north so that people would not have to go to south to Jerusalem, although they could have if they want to. The same thing, people from the south could go to the north and visit those shrines. So one of them was Bethel, the other one was Dan. Unfortunately, those shrines turned into temples of, as they say, wickedness, because they also had over their golden calves. And that is why Amos goes there and criticizes that cult as being against God. For that, unfortunately, he will be paying price of being kicked out of the area. He goes back to Jerusalem, where supposedly this very book that we are reading was written. And he, of course, is criticizing the way that they are worshiping God. So basically, he's focusing on idolatry. He's focusing on fake worship. And that is quite interesting and important to us. If you want to go to Bethel, it's in West Bank, some 3 miles away from Ramallah. There's not much there to see. We still see certain outlines of the building which matches actually the size of the Tabernacle of Moses. Actually, the Ark of the Covenant was even there centuries ago. So the meaningful place is still there, however, not much to see. Now, having all of that in mind, let's ask a couple of questions, because we read in the book of Deuteronomy that if there is a full moon, and of course during the Sabbath, people were not supposed to work. Now Amos is criticizing these people in today's first reading that they are worshiping, but they are worshiping with some kind of a rush attitude. They are, on one hand, doing something that they are supposed to be doing towards God. On the other, they are already thinking about how much money are we going to be making once the time of prayer or the time that we cannot work is over. So they're already strategizing. So their bodies are in worship, their minds or their spirits or their hearts are elsewhere. Thus, a couple of questions that I propose to you to ask yourself while reading the first reading. How do I celebrate the day of the Lord? Is there any difference between the day of the Lord that I celebrate and all the other days? And really, maybe the question is, whose day is that? Is it still the day of the Lord? Or maybe it is just the day of the Lord by association or by name. Do I worship because I have to? Maybe I'm at worship because I want to make a statement to others about me being there, but it doesn't really have anything to do with my own spiritual benefit. When I pray, and again, it doesn't have to be even in church, can I control my thoughts? Or am I, just like Amos is criticizing that, with my body somewhere that looks like I'm praying, but my mind is already strategizing the week ahead of me? Maybe another question in reference to Sunday and Day of the Lord. Do I even know that while resting, I'm praising God? Or I take it as a necessary evil, so to speak, that I have to survive? Or maybe I just focused on resting without any references to God? Am I taking maybe even the opportunity of Sunday to catch up with my work? Or maybe my work is even going way too far as to, I don't know, drilling holes and making noise. Do I think it is okay for me to do that? Because I may even try to explain myself that I have no other time to do that. And then going back to the reading, because it also speaks of scales. They were altered because it was quite often seen in the antiquities that people were cheating by the use of false scales. Some questions about that form of the service to God. Am I involved in any form of cheating, including mental kind of cheating or intellectual kind of cheating, if that is something that might be your thing? But also, let's look a little bit into most recent developments or most recent features of our lives. What is my use of the artificial intelligence like? Am I using that for the right reasons? Or maybe I'm using AI simply to ease up my life and simply pretend that it is my work. I think that Amos in this first reading has enough content for ourselves to discover or to ask ourselves a number of questions that might help you to really take care of your spiritual lives, specifically when it comes to the issue of worship, which of course we will tap onto while analyzing the gospel. Now, moving to the second reading from Paul's letter to Timothy. That's actually the first letter of Paul to Timothy. First of all, we have to say that we are not totally sure if even Paul wrote this letter. It could have been written by one of people that were simply close to Paul. Debate is still ongoing. And as much as we know Paul's letters to, Romans, Corinthians, and so on and so forth, this letter belongs to rather different kind of letters. 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, and Titus, they are letters written to pastors, actually, with very important issues. So they will be focusing on issues that might be also important to us, although we might not be pastors. Specifically, today's reading is coming from the first letter of Paul to Timothy, which was most likely written in Macedonia. And let's focus on a couple of issues that we find over there. The Romans allowed people all over their empire to profess their faith and to pray to their gods under one condition: that they would also pray to the goddess of Rome, goddess of Roma, which was the goddess of the city of Rome, and also they would have to pray to the god of a particular Caesar or emperor that was in charge. Now, when it comes to the Roman Empire and the Jews, because the Jews were pretty adamant about the fact that they could not pray to any other gods because that would be seen simply as blasphemy. They were allowed to pray for the health of the Caesar instead of praying to Caesar as if Caesar would be some kind of a god. So they were allowed to do that, and they were doing that, and Paul is referring to it, that it's okay to pray for those who are in charge. And that was going on. They did not have much of a problem with that until the year of 66, when the Zealots came in. Zealots was a group similar to Pharisees and Sadducees. That's one of the 6 groups that we can extinguish. We can see in Israel back in the days. And Zealots were very much involved in making sure that the Romans would be kicked out of Israel. So they were, in a sense, revolutionaries. They were also supported by some fraction of the temple people, and even very well known to us, Barabbas could have been one of them. So Zealots came in 66, and they decided that they would not be praying for the health of Caesar anymore, which effectively started the war between Israelites and Rome. And as a final statement of that, in the year of 70, Romans came and destroyed the second temple in Jerusalem. So here you have it. Now, let's ask a couple of questions when it comes to the second question that we see today. And I think that those questions might revolve around the issue of discipleship. So how do I understand my own discipleship when it comes to God? In terms of, is it about me or is it about God? Now, Paul is also stressing that these prayers for the Caesar should not be done in some kind of a political context, because he says that everybody should be prayed for, because everybody is to be saved. So, do I have, in my own understanding of what prayer should be, capacity to pray for everybody, even people that I disagree with, even people that I may hate? Do I see in them God's child? Or am I already dividing in my own mind who is to be saved and who is not? Again, so is it about me, my ambition, my worldview, or is it about God's plan and how God sees and intends to treat everybody? So in other words, am I aligned with God's plan, or do I aspire to create my own, despite what God might have in store for me? And finally, as we see it in today's second reading, the Jews, when they were praying, they were lifting their arms in prayer, as they do, and they, before they start the prayer, they actually have ritual ablutions, similarly to Muslims, but Muslims go a little bit further than that. So, in other words, when I pray, do I have my arms clean? And I don't mean that in some kind of a physical sense. So can I really pray without anger and argument? Am I able to free myself up from all these thoughts, from all these maybe aftermaths of experiences that came to me before I started the prayer? Or I'm praying, but in my mind there is a war going on, or there is some kind of a court setting going on. So can I free myself? Can I wash my hands, or can I wash my heart from everything that might be an obstacle in the process of me praying to God and really connecting with God and really speaking to God. So that's the second reading from Timothy. Moving to the gospel, which of course is a little bit tricky today. We are reading Luke's gospel. And we see a situation that a steward is managing money of of a master. And historically, that has to be a little bit explained, that if we look at slavery in Israel 2,000 years ago, it wasn't a slavery, or it wasn't necessarily a slavery as we understand it looking back at the American history. Some of the slaves or stewards were enslaved because they wanted to do that themselves. The reason for that could have been that they probably accrued too much of a debt, and because they had some skills and they could use them, they would enslave themselves so that their debts would be paid off. So it's not only that there were slaves at the very bottom of society, so to speak, but some of them were pretty smart, and they could do very important jobs despite the fact that they were being perceived as slaves. Now, what the steward is doing, that he's using the wealth of his master. So basically, he's reducing the debt that was owed to his master, and we are not talking about small amounts of money, because the 100 measures or barrels of olive oil that was produced by approximately 150 trees. So that's a lot. And the value of that was approximately 1,000 denarii, which was 1,000 days of work. And when it comes to the second one, 100 cores of wheat, the value of that was even higher, because approximately that was 2,500 denarii. So we are talking about substantial amount of money and substantial wealth. So he reduces that by half. That's a lot. And of course, the gospel ends with the statement, you cannot serve a God and mammon. But let's ask a couple of thought-provoking questions so that we could use that story, although written 2,000 years ago, but we can still use it for our purposes in 2025. So here are my proposals for some questions in order to enrich your spiritual lives. Are you willing to help others? And to what extent? And why would you do that? Is it because, or why would you not do that? Is it because you want to feel better? Or is it coming from the genuine need to help others? Or maybe you don't want to help others because you think it's their problem. So why should I bother? Are you eager to change your mind when it comes to other people, especially if you gave them your word that this is what it would be and I'm not changing my mind? Are you still ready and willing to actually, as they say, sleep on it and maybe even change your position? Or are you entrenched in your thinking and you're not willing to change your mind, to maybe meet the problem half the way, or at least consider changing your mind ultimately? To what extent are you resourceful when it comes to your own faith? Do you invest in your faith and spirituality? Or are you just thinking that maybe everything should come my way without me doing anything? Is it something that you are involved in? Your faith, your spirituality, and making plans for it, and investing in it, and researching new ways? or you just simply take it as is, or maybe not even taking, maybe just using certain opportunities for that. Another good question is, or might be, do you examine your conscience for both? Not only misdeeds, bad decisions, and stuff that you may regret, but also, do you examine your conscience for stuff that you've done right? For things that were good, that people appreciate? How often do you do that? And do you feel any impact from that on your life? Or maybe you haven't done it in many, many, many years, or you avoid the problem altogether. Another set of questions. What are you obsessed about in your life? And spend most time and energy thinking about? I'm going to give you a couple of ideas that you might be obsessed with, thinking about, focused on. Is it money? Or relationships? Maybe the arts? Or some kind of a power, dominance? Maybe you're obsessed with some kind of a comparison between yourself and other people. Maybe there is tons of jealousy associated with it because you compare yourself to other people. Maybe it's fashion because you want to dominate others, at least in not in a sense that would be physical, but maybe psychological. What is it that you spend most time on, energy on, in terms of your thinking? And on the flip side, is there God in that list? Or percentage-wise, how much time during the day are you spending talking with God, meditating, maybe reading the Bible, thinking about God? How would you like Him more time? And in what sense? Where is that in your life? So do you want to increase the time that you would be relating to God in any sense, shape, or form? And finally, again, going back to the first reading, what is your Sunday like? What is your day of the Lord like? What would you like that to be? So these are my proposals for you based on those 3 readings for the 25th Sunday of Ordinary Time, Cycle C. I wish you not only a very good day of the Lord, but also a very blessed week. And hopefully those questions will help you to be more fruitful spiritually and otherwise. God bless.